All right. Hello and welcome to For the Love of Sports. My name is Michael Rasile. I am your host, where I get to talk to really cool people in the sports business world. And today, that really cool person is Erick Villar. He is the social media coordinator at Combate Americas. Are you there?
Hey, good job, good job.
Nice, nice. He had worked in video production with the Rams and the Chargers, both LA teams, and also as a production assistant with the NFL. Eric, how you doing today, man?
It's doing good. Like we talked about, it's another good day to be alive and enjoying what we got.
It's a good day to be alive, brother. We cannot complain about that. So, Eric, I'm absolutely excited to talk about your time in sports media, with the Rams, with the Chargers, the NFL, obviously what you're doing now. But first question I have for everybody on For the Love of Sports podcast is, why do you love sports so much, man?
Uh, I guess it goes back to when I was a little kid. I was a little chunky boy when I was a little kid. So I guess the only way out was through sports, and that's kind of how I fell in love with sports. And my uncle had always been a big time San Francisco 49ers fan back in their heyday.
Hmm.
So he'd always sit me down to watch football, and that's just him and I on the weekends watching football. That's kind of how my love for football began. And then just me playing sports at parks, local parks, at the school, just kind of made my love for the sports grow bigger and bigger. And that's when I knew I was like, hey, I like this so much. Why don't I just go get a career where I get paid to do something in
Hmm.
sports instead of something in an office or a cubicle? I'm like, no, let's go down this path.
Yeah, man. I mean, why not get paid to do something that you're actually passionate about, right? Like, there's so many
Correct.
different jobs in sports, and you've had a few different ones already at this point. It's just crazy to me to think that, if you're an accountant that really loves sports, just be an accountant for, I
A
know
sports team.
it's a lot easier said than done, of course, because there's a lot of accountants that want that job. But I mean, if you work hard enough, you will eventually get close or get it at some point, which I just think is, why not at least shoot for it, right? Worst comes to
Correct.
worst, you go back to your cubicle job that you had before. So why not go doing something that you enjoy, work with something you love, including sports? And you've done that a little bit, man. And I know, so you went to University of Oregon. People can't see your T-shirt, but I saw it already. You got that nice. There we go. There we go. And you were planning on getting into sports journalism. So while you were there, I know you were did a radio show essentially for about 4 years, or at least you were on the radio for 4 years. Did a lot of different stuff at Oregon. Some we'll talk about in a second. With sports journalism, you started, 6, 7 years ago, I guess at this point, maybe even further, almost 10 years ago.
Sounds
What,
about right.
like, the state of sports journalism, in your opinion? I mean, what was it that drove you to want to do that? And how do you see that now? Because I was the same way. I always wanted to be on TV. I always wanted to be on ESPN. And now I see what's going on. And I'm super, super thankful that I'm not one of those people arguing about really dumb stuff that nobody actually cares about. So I'm just kind of curious your take on the
Mm.
industry and really what drove you in, and I guess how you've dealt with not being there, but probably being okay with it.
So I think what drove me there, like we talked about in high school, that's when I kind of was piecing it together, what I kind of wanted to do in life, and just watching Sports Center at the time. I was like, hey, what did these guys do? Like, how did they get up here? So I started researching like all the big time analysts, like they all went to Michigan,
Mhm.
Syracuse, Northwestern, all
Northwestern,
these
yep.
Missouri, all these big time journalism schools. Like, oh, they all went to school for journalism. All right, cool. I guess that's the path I got to take. So that's when I started looking. I applied to Syracuse, I applied to Northwestern, Michigan State, blah blah blah, for all these schools where I knew at least they had decent journalism programs. And then when I got to school, you just kind of go through your ups and downs. I started working for the soccer team. I did the sports radio, had a lot of fun with that. But then I started realizing, like, hey, this may not be what I want to do, just because when I would get on like in front of camera or on the radio, I would get, jitterbugs.
Hmm.
And then sometimes, just couldn't, stuff wouldn't come out. Like I remember my first radio show, I came out, I said about 4 words and went blank on live air. I was like, oh my God,
Oh,
this is the
buddy.
worst way to start. Luckily, the co host was able to pick me up and kept going, and I came back in later. But I was just like, oh my Lord, this is not the best way to start this off. And then just kind of again but I still continue with the radio just because I enjoy sports, and I did radio because I knew on camera I didn't think I was ready for that yet. And the radio was just cool because it was free. It was a bunch of kids in college that just loved talking it up about sports. Again, we don't have like ESPN where you got to go through this
Hmm.
talk about the same thing every day for the
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
week. No, we would talk about, hey, what do we want to talk about today? What are the major topics? Obviously, football, basketball, track and field. You used to get your major sports at Oregon like every other school, but we had more of leeway to kind of talk about more stuff we wanted to, so that was fun. And then initially out of school, I had an offer for like at a radio station down here in LA. It was ESPN 1330, but it was a Spanish radio station, and that kind of it's funny. I moved back home. I was ready to go. And then I hear crickets, nothing back from them. And I was like, well, I said no to everything else because I thought I had this job ready to go. And when they didn't get back to me, I was like, well, now what? And then that's kind of where everything kind of fell into place. I ended up with the Rams, and now I'm here at Combate. And again, like you talked about, nowadays, seeing how, like, I hate watching some sports shows now just because, like, Stephen A., for example, love the man. Hate watching it just because he just goes on rants, and I'm just like, dude, please, this is not what I want to hear for the 10th day in a row.
Exactly.
Especially, like, again, like when you talk about, like, maybe just put, for example, LeBron. When LeBron's the biggest, when the LeBron's the it thing, you go any sports channel you put on, that's what they're talking about. And I'm like, there's other sports going on, not just LeBron James. Can we talk about that for a second?
There are other players in the NBA too, right? Like,
yeah,
I completely agree. It's so ridiculous just kind of seeing just these guys and these girls essentially just yell at each other for an hour and a half straight, and then just do it again with just two different people. Like, it just makes no sense to me how some of these executives have their jobs. I like to think we are like the normal sports fan, just the person that likes to watch a lot of sports, but I want to be up to date with the news. Like, don't just put people screaming at each other in front of me. That's not enjoyable at all. Unfortunately, if that's what the ratings say, gonna keep doing it. But I don't know, man. I just think it's ridiculous. I miss the days of ESPN News where it would just be a 30-minute block. They'd show the same exact clips over and over again from like 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. I'd watch all of it. Then they change for another 4 hours, and then they change again, and that was it. And I'd watch it over and over and over again.
Yeah, but like nowadays, I think I enjoy watching. I don't know if you see Jalen Jacoby, because I feel like that's kind of what I want. Just two dudes talking about sports. No screaming, no arguing. They have some good guests, different guests do it normally too. And it's like, that's what I want. Like, I want two people that just love talking about sports. It's like basically like you and I, just two friends who normally argue about sports. But, we just want to talk about it in front of everyone else. That I don't want to hear you yapping, you yapping, you yapping. I'm like, that doesn't help nobody out.
Exactly, man. Like, let's have a conversation about it. Let's see each other's point of view, not say you take that side of the argument, I take this side, and we yell at each other. But that's a whole nother conversation. So as you said, you're on the radio for a while. Wasn't maybe you weren't the best at it, but it sounds like you stuck with it, which is pretty impressive, especially after that first time. So many people would have just been like, nope, this isn't for me, and I'm out. But clearly you stuck with it. We're there for 4 years. I mean, how much better did you see yourself getting? I mean, to the point where you had the opportunity for a job with ESPN. Now, I don't exactly remember what you said that job was for, but at ESPN Radio, clearly you're doing something with the radio, right? So you were there for a few years. How much better did you see yourself with that consistent, persistent, just working ethic at, just getting better at being on the radio?
So I think what helped me out initially was I had a really great high school teacher who kind of became my mentor. And when I told him I was going to Oregon in the career path I wanted to choose, he's the one who initially told me to go check out the radio station because he did a bunch of research on the school. And I was like, holy smokes, I was not prepared for you to like actually do a deep dive into what's available. So I went there after that first initial just terrible, basically audition in a sense. I sent it to him. He goes, don't worry, because he had done radio back in the day in Kentucky where he's from. And he did it for years. So he basically kind of was like my right-hand man. He was like my rock. He's like, Eric, don't worry. It happens to everyone. Well, maybe not everyone, but it's the jitterbug of like the first time doing it. I've never had that kind of experience. And I knew I wanted to stick by it because I'm like, if I quit now, like I came here to do sports. And after my first mess up, I can't just give up. And it got nicer. It got better because so obviously I recorded myself because I would cover women's basketball, men's basketball, softball, just a bunch of random sports that the bigger places wouldn't cover. And I would show up, for the post game, do the interviews, and create like a little post game package in a sense. And every year, I'd always keep my clips and I'd go back and listen. And I'd be like, wow, that was terrible when I started because I was nice and slow and talking like this because I wanted to make sure everyone understood what I was saying. But I was like, God, I sound terrible. So as the years went by, I noticed how I just felt more comfortable on the mic. And then, as the radio station saw that I just was very aggressive, was just wanting to get out there and be better, they gave me like, I guess, the better position. So I started covering Oregon football games, which is like what everyone wanted to do. So they gave me that junior and senior year because I had been there since freshman year. And that's kind of like you work your way up to football because obviously football is the bread and butter at Oregon. Yeah. So when I got to that, that's when I knew like, hey, well, it actually worked out. It paid off for me, and then I got way more comfortable. But then I was also like, wow, but I'm not watching the football game. I want to be a fan and enjoy, you know, the aspect of a football game. So I was like teeter-tottering with like, should I cover? Should I not cover? Because I was always like, hey, you want it or not? There's some games where I'm like, I have to cover. There's some games where I'm like, no, I have to go watch. So that's what happened. But the ESPN 1330 job was just the same thing as the radio. I was just going to be there like NFL guy just because they had a guy who was covering NFL, but he wasn't the best at it because he was more focused in soccer and boxing. So I was going to come in and help them with football. They had the Rams and the Chargers at the time, I believe. But I kind of glad that kind of fell off because at that time, it was a Spanish radio station. And my Spanish was just not great because I had left to go to Oregon and my Spanish has dropped down since, you know, there's nobody. I'm not using my Spanish on a day-to-day basis like I am here at home. But I did decide to major in Spanish just to at least listen to it and read it in a sense. But again, that kind of paved out because I think if I would have stayed at that station, it would have been another terrible debut because my Spanish was not up to par to where it should be for a radio station where it's just strictly Spanish.
Yeah, that would be pretty difficult. And where I didn't ask you earlier, but where is home?
Los Angeles. So I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, specifically in Hollywood.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, I went to Hollywood High School, the good old Hollywood High School. You know,
Like,
it's just.
Like,
was
is
nice.
that like 90210 stuff? I don't.
That's Beverly Hills. That's Beverly Hills.
All right. Maybe next time. I'll get it next time.
Where the
Melrose
yep,
place?
Melrose. Yep, Melrose.
Okay,
I'm right by Melrose. I'm literally 2 blocks from Melrose, so it's nice. I'm right by like Fairfax, Melrose, Hollywood Boulevard, all that stuff.
I got my 90s like teen dramedies down, so we're good there. Teen dramas. I'm sorry. So you get into sports media, you love it, you hang out there for a couple years, you're doing your thing, you almost get this job, but it doesn't quite come along, which is very unfortunate. But I do want to take a step back because you kind of touched upon it, and you kind of just glossed over it, but you helped out with the Oregon's women's soccer team, the University of Oregon women's soccer team. You were a manager there, and you were telling me before you felt like a student athlete without any of the perks except you got the backpack, which is pretty sweet. And a lot of people really do gum for that backpack. Believe me, I know. So,
and then for anyone who hasn't seen the backpack,
yeah.
This is one of the prized possessions at any sports school.
Look at that,
the backpack. Man.
Gotta love it, dude. That is too funny. Appreciate you showing us, man. But
no
what I guess so you wanted to work in sports media. Where is the connection to sports media? Why was working as a team manager? How is that helpful, or how would that be? Here we go. How would that have been helpful in your career moving forward within that realm?
So for that job, I wasn't even thinking about like sports media. I was just like, I need a job to help pay for school.
Very nice.
And I was like, I already had done restaurant jobs here at home. And I was like, I don't want to do this again. It's the worst thing. And then I remember maybe like my 3rd day on campus, I was just tossing the ball with my roommate. And then we met people who were playing football. And I saw the backpack. He had it. I was like, hey, you play sports here? It's like, I've only seen athletes carry that backpack. He goes, no, I'm one of the managers for the women's basketball team. I was like, that's a job? Because at that point, I was still oblivious to, the actual how sports world worked in college. So he told me about the process. Like, yeah, I get to travel with the team. My job is basically just shag the balls for the players, set up practice, do laundry, clean up. But again, the worst part, your schedule has to work with the schedule of the team. Doesn't matter. And the only bad part is that at Oregon, they didn't let the regular student manager get first access at classes. So I had to wait for my access to classes to be able to like match the schedule. But he told me, he's like, yeah, there's an extra application process. But the person who helped me get the job just told me, dude, just email the assistant coaches of the teams you want to work for, get directly at them because it works out better. And I was like, all right, okay, I'll remember that. And then I kept that in mind. And maybe like 2 months into school, my mom was like, hey, where's your job at? Where's your job at? And then it came to mind. I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that sports manager thing. So then I emailed football, basketball, women's basketball, softball, baseball, and soccer. All sports I was comfortable with, or at least I knew that I can maneuver my way through the sport. Football said So at Oregon, football has trials for managers every fall. So every spring. So they start you off in winter, and then for spring ball, and then they work you up to the spring game, and that's where they like cut you down to like who's gonna make it, who's not gonna make it. So they told me if I want to do that, I have to wait till spring. I'm like, I can't wait that long. I need to jump sooner. And then luckily soccer was like, hey, actually, we're about to lose some guy after the winter. So you would be able to come in the winter to learn and start full time in the spring. But, come in, let's interview you, see what happens. And that whole interview process, went great in my sense. But I told them like, hey, I have not played soccer since like middle school. I know the sport, don't play the sport. Not my foot-to-eye coordination, terrible.
Not quite the same. Yeah.
Not my game. That's just not my game. And they're like, no worries, we're not gonna ask you to play. We have practice players for that. And I was like, I got out of there feeling comfortable. I was like, oh, that was a good interview. Let's see how this goes. And then over winter break, I get a call from the head coach saying, hey, actually the guy who's gonna leave took off early. So if it's okay, can you start in the winter? I was like, of course I can start. But I was like, but what's the schedule? Because at that point I already selected my classes. And it so works out that I had chosen nothing but afternoon classes because I wanted to sleep in. And then they were only going to have morning practices all the winter term. I was like, oh, thank God. But then that's when I realized idea of waking up early to go to practice because I had to be there an hour before anybody else to make sure everything's set up. And that's kind of how I got into there. And then as I grew, you just become more comfortable, basically we're just a big family. I was basically in a sense like the big brother or the brother because it's just me, the other student manager, and one of the head coaches were males. Only 3 males on a team with 32 girls, nutrition staff who were all females, head coach, assistant coach were females. So it's like 35 to 38 females and 3-4 dudes.
All right.
So it was like, it was a cool experience. So not the worst.
It could be worse. Exactly. It could definitely have been worse. And what in terms of what you learned in that position? I mean, again, like I have to assume efficiency, productivity, time management were probably just a few of the many, many things, as well as relationship management. Again, 4 dudes and 30 something girls, as you said, really have to make sure all the relationships are proper. I mean, it doesn't matter really that ratio of guys to girls. I feel like if it's a swing in one direction or the other, there's just a little bit more contention. So like how was that experience? And I got to ask, was it worth the backpack?
It was definitely.
It sounds like that's the only reason you went there, man. You really wanted that backpack.
I didn't know. I didn't get the backpack till like a year later because they give it to you you only get the backpack every fall because that's when the new gear comes out. But again, you get the Nike gear that not anybody else can get. So you're in there with the equipment. It's soccer, football, baseball, So basically at Oregon, we have 2 equipment managers. By Alton Stadium, which is about 20-minute walk from campus, you have football, soccer, baseball, and acrobatics and tumbling because all the stuff's over there. Mm-hmm. Then on campus, you have the rest of sports. So I was always working with the football staff and the baseball staff. We all just for big one. So we all saw the gear, saw the stuff. We're like, that's cool. That's cool. That's cool. That's cool. So that was cool. But I think what I really learned was time management, relationships, and just growing up. Because at the end of the day, I had to wake my ass up to go to work because if I miss it, there goes my ass. I lose my job. And the thing about being a sports manager at Oregon, you get put on scholarship, so you get partially a part of your tuition paid for. And I'm an out-of-state student, so it's not the cheapest thing at Oregon to be an out-of-state student. So that helped out. I got tuition plus books, and books, as any college student knows, those can add up after a while depending on the classes. But I'll say relationships because at the end of the day, I'm friends with both players and staff. But I'm still working for the staff. So there's times, you see stuff happening between the players. I'm like, why'd you do that? Because now I got to go say something because at the end of the day, I'm your friend, but I'm technically not your friend at the same time because I got to still report stuff that I see. So I think that was one of the more trickiest things to balance after a while. Because at the beginning, I was still like timid, shy, like still trying to work. But then the thing, I think I fell into the trap where I just became really good friends with everybody. And I was letting some stuff slide that the coaches, I think, eventually heard about. And they're like, well, okay, Erick, I get it. We get it. You're all hanging out with each other pretty much every day and you become friends, but you're still working. You got to be here to work. So I think that was kind of the first lesson I learned. And the other one's just being a hard worker because there's only two managers and other teams have 5, 6, 8, 10. So it's 2 of us working for everyone. So we had to do laundry, set up the field, travel, make sure our schedule fits the soccer schedule and still be a student at the same time, which, you still got to balance everything out. So I think also just a balancing act is basically what you're playing the whole time because you want to be a student, you want to enjoy college, and you got to go work because during season, we're traveling every other week to different places. And then you got to make sure your studies are, up to par. So on the plane where everyone's reading a book, taking exams. And then when we're at the hotel, everyone's the same thing. You had study hour for everyone to make sure you get your classes done first because at the end of the day, we're students first. So, but again, I got the full athlete experience again because I had access. So at Oregon, we have something called I already forgot the name of it. The Jaquel. So the Jaquel Center is our student center. If anyone looks it up, the Jaquel Center is basically a massive glass building for athletes, student athletes only for tutoring. And that was like one of the gems on campus because everybody wanted to be inside that building. And if you didn't have a key card, you couldn't access that building. And that building was just amazing because I was like, holy smokes, this is what they talk about when they talk about, like, you get little things that other people are not treated to. And that was great. The traveling was great as well. I got to go to different places that I don't think I would be able to do otherwise. And then I guess just the gear itself, just because for football, I realized that football already has uniforms planned out for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
And so I got like the behind the scenes info to that. I was like, oh, I didn't even know this was a thing. Like, this is cool. I got to see like when they would get all like their Jordans. I was like, oh, you guys are so lucky. That's when I was like, damn, I'm jealous. I'm working for a women's staff because I would get like, you'd get ends meet because like you would have to focus on the girls first. And then by my third year, when the male assistant coach came in, he goes, no, don't worry, guys. We're going to make our own order for guys because we can't rely. Because the first 2 years, I had to get like X stuff from like baseball, football, because the soccer staff would always forget, like, hey, we have male staff. And they would only order women's stuff. And I'd be like, I can't wear any of this stuff. And I have to be in Oregon gear. So I think that was funny. But eventually they like learned and caught on. And then I think the coolest thing too was my last year when they renovated the equipment center over by us, because I don't know if you guys heard, Marcus Mariota donated a bunch of money to the school, and they built this massive thing in his memory, and they made this nice ass equipment room for us. And I was like, this would have been nice to have all 4 years, but you know, you got to work with what you got. But overall, the experience, like I said, basically I was a student athlete without having to do all those other work on the side, which kind of worked out to my advantage.
Seems like you still did a bunch of work though. Let's be honest about that. And it does seem like you were not ran thin, because clearly you got through it, and it sounds like you got through it pretty well. But definitely a lot that comes with it. And let's be honest, man, it's nobody asked Phil Knight for a new freaking equipment like center. I find that very hard to believe. They asked everybody. Anyway, that's a whole nother. I read Shoe Dog. Good book.
I'm currently in the process of reading that book right now too.
It's pretty good. I don't want to say it live, but read it. It's interesting. Nice story about Nike. I'm sure a couple things were left out somewhere along the line, but it is what it is. But no, man, I think that is really cool. And I'm very glad we got to talk about that a little bit, because, you know, that student athlete experience, especially at a major college program like Oregon. I mean, across the board, you guys are pretty much great at a lot of different things. How was the women's soccer team? Quickly, I actually have no idea.
They weren't the best, not the best. You know, we never made it to the tournament. They were never that good. We had, I think, 1 year where they surpassed like the most amount of wins they've had in a while. So we had like one good year, but in general, it wasn't like top-notch sports, when like the lower sports.
Still kind of cool though.
But it was still fun just because, again, the experience itself. I think my college experience would be completely different if I was not part of that staff. Because again, I was part of that staff from winter term of my freshman year up until I graduated. So it was off basically 4 years. I was there, which is great. And I would throw those out there. If you guys are in school, go look at those equipment staff positions, because they can be really helpful. Because 1 year, I didn't mention this, but I was really close with the head coach. My dad had lost his job, and it was just kind of becoming rough for us to pay for school. And I kind of mentioned it to her, and out of nowhere, she throws me more money for my scholarship for that year. Wow. And I was like, wow, that was that really helped out, because that basically kind of, in a sense, made up for what my dad had to pitch in. So that kind of really helped out.
Fantastic.
That's when I knew. I was like, this is where I'm meant to be. This is where I'm meant to be.
Well, on top of it though, it probably means you were also doing a pretty damn good job, right? Like, I'm sure this person, whomever he was
Cat Merch. Shout out Cat Merch.
Shout out Cat. What is up? Thanks for everything you do. I'm sure, you know, she would have done this for multiple people, but at the same time, it definitely helps if you're an extremely hard worker and she understands what you mean to the team and what you've been able to, the energy, the effort, the blood, sweat, tears that you've been able to put into it. I'm sure those things definitely played a part in that. So shout out, Kat. We really appreciate what you did for Eric there. Thank you. So yeah, let's hop back and forward in time now. So you had that job. We're Quentin Tarantinoing this a little bit. Sorry.
It's fine.
So you had that job lined up with ESPN 1330, the bilingual. You were going to be on the Spanish
side
football and post game, I think is what you said. You were going to do.
They just told me like, yeah, like they just told me in general, I was just gonna cover football for them.
That's
They were
pretty
still
sweet.
gonna try to figure out what role, but they're like, yeah, just basically gonna help us with their football coverage. I was like, yes, that's
Perfect.
perfect
Let's
for
do
me.
it.
Let's do
Can't
that.
wait. So you, as you said, you kind of got ghosted by them. I don't think
Mhm.
that term really existed back then, but it does now. And it sounds like you absolutely got ghosted by them.
Mhm.
How long did it take you before you started getting back onto the grind of looking for jobs? Because if anybody that's like been out there sending resumes every day, writing new cover letters, that part sucks. That part is the absolute worst. And I know a bunch of friends that have done it. I've done it myself, of course. How long did it take before you kind of were like, all right, it doesn't look like this is coming through. I got to start doing that again.
I think I gave it 2 weeks to like see. I think every other day I was like emailing, calling. I was like,
Yeah.
hey, like I'm back, graduated, I'm ready to work. What's the word? And just after 2 weeks, I was like, all right, time to move on.
Mhm.
And then I remembered about 2 years, I came back home about two
So
summers ago. Go ahead,
let's.
sorry.
I want to stop you there. So what's that like though? I mean, if how much you remember it, because that first job out of college, I got mine very quickly, so I didn't have too much to worry about. Turns out I hated the job, so it didn't really matter. But that first job out of college, like knowing that you had something set up, being that excited, especially for something that you would have loved. I'm sure you told all your friends, you told all your family. I mean, not the fact that they just kind of took it away from you, or at least didn't give it to you. Now you have to go back to your friends and back to your family, and they're like, "Oh, how's that ESPN job?" Well, it turns out I kind of got screwed. They didn't answer my emails, and now you don't look like an idiot, but you kind of feel you look like an idiot. That whole thing. I mean, what was that like, especially right out of college, feeling so excited, and then kind of just completely bring you
Uh,
down?
just to put it was just if I can say it was a shitty feeling. Like I was like, I basically had blown off a bunch of people who were like wanted to talk to me about
Yep.
applications I had sent out, and I was like, nope, I got a job already, I'm good to go. And when I came back, I just settled back. I was like, wow, I just spent 4 years at school to get this job. It's like, what happened? Like, what did I do wrong? And then
Hmm.
I remember I had own family members telling me like, why don't you just go back to like your restaurant job you have? I was like, I did not go spend
Yeah.
4 years of my life at a university to just come back and do the exact same thing I was doing. That
Yeah.
is not happening. I'm sorry. I would rather not have a job and continue to find the one I want than to return back to where I was. Because if you go back there, you're gonna get comfortable,
Yeah.
money's gonna come in, and then you're not gonna want to move up. So I was like, no, I can't do that. Like I graduated, I have my degree, I have to put this piece of paper to work.
Hmm.
It was like,
100%, man.
as expensive as it was, we got to make it work. So about 2 3 weeks, I was just like, oh my god, I just moved myself down here. I thought I had a job because before this job, I almost said yes to a job in Portland, but then I said, oh, let me give spring break a chance, and that's when the whole ESPN thing
Hmm.
came about. So I was like, oh no, F Portland, I'm going back home to work in football. So after that, I was just like, what now? Like, what's like I had not been sending applications for months. I didn't worry about resumes, cover letters. I was like, well, now I got to go back to ground zero. And then I remember I reached out to my counselor at Oregon, who I've known since my freshman year, and she was like, just go back, just start process all over again. Just start looking at what you want to do, what you like, and just start sending out apps. And I was like, well, let's do this again. And then that's when I remember one summer that I had come back home. I was at the gym and I ran into a high school friend who he told me on the weekends he was just like doing photography stuff for the Rams. So I remember I just reached out to him like, hey, who's your boss? What side of the
Hmm.
Rams does he work at? He goes, oh, we're on the operation side, so not like the creative side that I'm on currently now with my job. So they work directly with the players and coaches. So I was like, hey, can you ask him if there's any availability, because I'm just trying to get a job now that I'm graduated. 2 days later, he goes, yeah, we're looking for somebody. Training camp starting in 2 weeks. He said, if you can come down to Irvine next week for an in-person interview, we'll go from there. I was like, well, yeah, that sounds promising. I get to, the idea of working for the Rams. I was like, oh, hell yeah, let's go do this.
There we go.
So drove down to Irvine, and it was just one of those, like, he didn't say anything. He goes, here's a camera, there's practice, go film. I was like, oh, okay. But luckily, because I worked for the Oregon women's soccer team, part of my position there was to film practices and
Ah, so I
games.
was gonna ask,
So
like,
that's
where along the way have we been filming anything?
so
And
that's
good,
where
good.
that's where
All
those
right.
two clicked. I was like, well, luckily I have done some kind of filming, so I knew how to like hold the camera, how to pan, because that was taking it back. That was one of the biggest not on our coach. She hated when the guy would just zoom across the field to catch up. So she goes, nope, just go slowly, pan out so you can see everything. So that's what, like, at least that part of the women's soccer team applied to this job.
There we
So
go.
then he saw the film. He goes, not too bad. Obviously, it needed some work, but he goes, well, if you want the job, it's yours. It's like it's not doesn't pay much. You're an intern, but you're here for the full season, training camp season, and then postseason. I was like, cool. You know, I always wanted to work for the football. Let's do it. And then that's kind of where it took off.
That is awesome, man. Yeah, I was kind of curious this whole time. Like, I know you got into production with both the Rams and the Chargers, and I was like, we haven't talked about camera or film. You
Mhm.
wanted to get into sports media, and it does make sense. So I'm glad we stopped on the topic of the Oregon women's soccer team, because obviously that did come in handy, being
Yeah.
there as long as you did, getting comfortable with a lot. You know, as you said, there was only two managers, right?
Yeah.
And so that means you guys did everything
Everything.
that was
And then
necessary, and that was one of them. It turns out, and here you go, you got a job.
that's kind of one of the cool things that worked out because the other manager was a business guy and I was, trying to be on the creative side. So I think once the coaches saw that, they kind of used that to their advantage. So he was on the field during games, basically doing stats, touches, goals, assists, flags. I was up on the stands recording, social media on the side. So I did some social media for them. So whenever we were on the road, I would reach out to like famous Oregon alums that live in there. Hey, we're in town. Come check us out. We got tickets for you guys. So I just started doing a little bit of like stuff like that. So that's kind of what helped out. And then what they also liked is that I already had been traveling for work for the previous 3 years at Oregon and working for the team, which is exactly what I was doing with the Rams. You're going to work for the team. You're here to serve them, basically, and you're going to have to travel. I was like, free travel, working for the NFL. I get to go all over the world. Great. I would say the best part about working for the NFL team is travel. It's like VIP access. So, you're for the Rams, it was crazy because we would always travel Fridays after practice or Saturdays after practice. And it's like a scramble because we're out there running around with the equipment. So once practice is over, the players, relaxing on their way to change or whatever. We're over there getting all our gear and our little Humvees, just running around practice fields, picking up stuff, taking it back, having to pack all that again to put in the buses, and we got to go shower, change, and hop on the bus. But when you get on the bus, you get full police escort all the way to the airport. We're in the plane. We have a full plane to ourselves. Nobody sits in the middle. Everyone has either a window or a chair, and free food, free movies, free TV, the full experience. And luckily, we sat in the back and like a bunch of like the goofballs sat in terms of players sat in the back. So there's always be like, remember one time there was like Robert Quinn just had his like big old speaker in the back, and they were just bumping tunes, and everybody was just like giggling and laughing. Awesome. So it's just overall the experience of working for them is great, but the job itself at the end, it was just not for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that experience was an absolute blast. That just sounds like so much fun hanging out with the players. Again, I'm sure you developed a lot of relationships with them along the way as well. I mean, you're there for an entire year. So the job wasn't for you. And again, that wasn't really what you were looking to do anyway. So it's not too surprising. You needed a job, as you said. You didn't want to go back to your restaurant job because it feels like you're kind of just spinning your wheels at that point. At least this way you start to get into the industry a little bit. So you were with the Rams for about 9 months, correct?
Correct. So I started for training camp, and I went up until like draft is what I did for them. And then
so this was
2017, right after graduate, 2017.
And that was the Super Bowl?
No, that was the year before the Super Bowl. It's the year we lost. That's the year we lost to the Falcons. Right? Yeah. Heartbreaking. But so if you want me to break down the job in a sense,
yeah, sure.
So the hardest part again, also, so I live in LA. Rams are located in Thousand Oaks. For anyone who doesn't know, that's 40 miles away from where I live.
Wow.
One way. So I was up to avoid traffic. I was up every day at 5 a.m. to be there by like 6, and I'd be there from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. It was basically just to avoid traffic, because if I left anywhere after 5:30, 5:45, I was traffic. I'm hitting a wall the whole way there. And if I came home anytime before 6:37, traffic the whole way here. So I'd get there early. We had to set up meetings. Everyone had like tight ends room, quarterback room. Everyone had a meeting to set up. But the good thing is, you have breakfast there. You have snacks galore, breakfast galore, everything galore pretty much.
The amenities and the perks of this job sounded pretty sweet.
No, perks and amenities about the job were probably the best thing about it, because then you show up, here's all your Rams gear to be wearing around practice. I still have a bunch of free Rams gear, Oregon gear, Chargers gear, and I'm a Broncos fan, so wearing the Chargers gear hurt. But I'm like, a job's a job at the end of the day, so it doesn't matter. And then basically my job was basically to point and shoot a camera during practice, and then go back, edit it for the coaches and players to see the plays. And then for 2 days, just go back, run new practice. And because my boss knew I had done like Final X and Premiere, I had to work with the training staff because they did a bunch of mobility stuff for the players to see, like, just to make sure they're doing the thing right. And I had to go in there and just basically edit all that video for them. And then during game days, I had one of the better jobs. I was on the field passing out the surfaces that the players and coaches used to watch the plays. That was my job on game day. So I
That's the
had
best.
basically a field view of everything, which is great.
That
And
is
then,
that is incredible. And that was a good year though, right?
yeah,
That was Sean McVay's first year, so that was still a lot of fun. It started to get promising. A good buddy of mine's a Rams fan, so I kind of pay attention to them a little bit more than those random
that's
teams
the
out there.
year. That's the year I got to go to London as well with the
Mhm,
team. We went to Jacksonville. We hung out in Florida for a whole week because they didn't want to fly back and then fly
mhm.
over to London. So after we played the Jaguars, we stayed and then flew over to London. That was cool. We
That's
stayed in like
awesome.
this top notch hotel, maybe like 45 minutes north of London.
Mhm.
They had a spa. Everything was included. I was like, we're living the life here. This
Damn,
is
man.
great.
What's it like going back to normal people life? Like that plane ride, I feel like if ever went on a plane ride like that, I don't think I could go on another plane ride again.
Once I
Like
started,
that's the thing. You get
yeah.
used to it.
Once I went on those planes, and for my current job at Combate, I travel with them too, and I'm just another passenger, and I'm like,
Mhm.
I miss the days where they pick me up, take me to the plane.
Yep.
I literally hop off and hop on. We didn't have to go. We did a
Yep.
TSA pre-check in Thousand Oaks for the Rams facility, and it was just like pat you down. All right, hop on the bus. Because as soon as we drive up, you just go straight onto the bus. So I remember after that experience, I was like, God, this would be nice to have every time you travel.
Mhm.
Just experience. But you know what? You just grow to love it. But I'm like at the end of the day, I'm like, well, it was nice to have. I don't mind again, but
Pretty cool.
just
Now you
wasn't.
know. Now
Yeah,
you know what you're shooting for, right? Now you know where you wanna get
yeah,
to.
it just wasn't the job for me at the end of the day
Yeah.
because during season, my friends, family did not see me. What I was working Monday, Friday through Saturday sometimes, or we were gone for the weekend.
Mhm.
So and the turnarounds were crazy because when we would travel, the game ends, hop on the bus straight to the airport, back home. So you better make sure we got to pack everything as fast as we can
Mhm.
because everyone's trying to get out there as soon as we want.
Yeah.
So it's just the turnaround is crazy, and you got to get back home. And then LAX to Thousand Oaks, another like 30-minute, 40-minute drive as well. So you have to wait for that drive. We'll get there, hop everything off, make sure the players or coaches are fine.
Mhm.
Say if they need anything, we got to stay back and do that, and then go home. And then we got to be back the next day to
Yep.
prepare for the week. So it was just,
My goodness.
so it
Pretty
was, and then coming straight from college. So I graduated early from Oregon.
Mhm.
My last 3 months, I was just up there to hang out with friends and just work and just enjoy college before it's officially over. So it went from doing kind of nothing to having nothing to do but work.
Mhm.
In
Yep.
a span of like 2 months, I was like, oh my God, this real world is not as fun as everyone was talking about.
Right.
Job
And
was fun, but the whole thing was like just, oh my God, what am I
I
doing here?
I actually cannot imagine it. So thank you for explaining it a little bit to us. Again, pretty jealous of those amenities and the perks. But after that, yeah, I can understand how it gets kind of tough. And so you said it really wasn't the job for you. And I guess, after the Rams, you then went to the Chargers for a couple months as well. I think if I'm not mistaken, my timeline has it where you were at the Rams and the Chargers for like a maximum of like a year, it looks like.
Correct. Yeah, yeah. So after
So
my boss
yeah.
at the Rams said there's gonna be probably a chance they won't be able to bring all of us back, but he's like, hey, but the Rams are hiring. They reached out to us if we know anybody. And I was like, well, if they're hiring, if they're gonna have me for the year, I'll go. I'll take
Mhm.
it. So I went, met with them. But at that same time, I had met someone who said, hey, I can get you into the NFL Network. I'm like, of course, yeah,
Yeah.
NFL Network. I've always wanted to work there, and it's closer to home because the Rams are. I mean, the Chargers are the complete opposite way. They're down in Orange County, and it's another hour away from me. I'm like, oh God, I don't want to be driving this way again, another hour. And they paid less than the Rams.
Ooh,
I was like,
uh,
as an intern, I'm like, this is not gonna help out. So
mhm.
then when I went through the whole process, I was with the Chargers for 2 months as I was like going through the interview process with
Mhm.
the NFL Network. I didn't want to leave until I knew if I had an offer or not. And then when they offered me, it's when I broke it down. I'm like, hey guys, I'm gonna have to say thank you, but no
Yeah.
thank you. Like I'm
Yeah.
gonna take this job because it's just better for me and my career.
That's
And
awesome.
it worked out. And then the network job was fun, but then I also realized it's not what I want to do also.
Mhm. Yeah, so I mean, the Chargers job, it seems like it was a lot of the same stuff with the Rams job, just for a significantly shorter period of time. So,
Pretty
talk
much.
to me about. I mean, you called it when we spoke on the phone. I don't know, a week ago, earlier this week. I don't time days. They don't really make sense anymore. But when you were talking about it, you were saying that this was kind of a dream job, as you just said, like working for the NFL. Like, how many people would pay to work for the NFL, right? And you got the opportunity to get paid to work for the NFL out there, NFL Network, based in LA, as you kind of stated. So I mean, what was that like? I mean, you work for the Rams, you work for the Chargers, two the new LA teams, feeling good. You get this job with the NFL Network. I mean, how excited are you? And at what point do you start to realize, like, all right, yeah, this isn't quite what I was looking for, and maybe I don't. This isn't quite the dream job that I thought it would be.
So yeah, I was as happy as can be, as you can think, as anyone think. I live in, born and raised in LA. All I've ever wanted to do was to work for a team or the NFL Network. So when I finally
You
got
did
the,
all of it. You did
yeah,
all of it
I
in
did
like a
in
span
two
of a
years.
year.
In
Yeah.
2 years, I was like, holy smokes, this is really happening. And I was like, wow, this is great for my resume. Who everyone's gonna want to hire me. Just thinking out of the blue, like hell yeah. And then when I finally get to the NFL Network as a production assistant, our job was to basically sit at a desk, work. We had a couple shows we worked on every day. Work with an editor, and basically just my job was to look at the rundown of the show,
Mhm.
go to the production meeting, see what we're going to talk about, and just basically go into our storage and find like the clips they wanted us to find. And then that was pretty much every day the same thing. So I got tired of the repetition of the job. It was just sitting down, staring at a TV, and that's pretty much it. And eventually, I was watching so much football, I couldn't watch football for fun anymore.
Oh
Like
no.
I was getting tired because I'm staring at of game film every day. On the side, they have our network shows on all the TVs pretty much.
Mhm.
And on the weekends when we covered football games, we're watching games. And I couldn't even watch games because on Sundays, your job is to watch your game, and basically the highlights that you guys see on like NFL highlights or NFL game day, those are the highlights we're building. So we
Mhm.
have to go in there and like, okay, we're gonna use that for the highlight, we're gonna use that for the highlight, but I can't watch anything else but my game and focus to make sure, like, say the Patriots are playing the Rams and it's like Tom Brady might retire. Story of the game is Tom Brady.
Mhm.
But if anything else develops, we got to push it that way.
Yeah.
There's just little things like that, but like we have to worry about our game and our game only. And you really, and at the same time, we're like writing about like what's going down with. We're basically typing out what's going on. Like first down, it was a path to blah 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 for 5 yards,
Mhm.
and then clip it, and the next one. So we're writing. We're like triple tasking at the same time. It's like just wasn't fun after a while.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like too much fun, honestly. And that's one thing. So again, you went into sports media though, and the understanding is when you're in sports media, it goes from the thing that you love to enjoy as a hobby, kind of, as a positive, let's call it a net positive in your life, down to almost a net negative because that becomes your career, that becomes your job, and you don't get to, as you said, enjoy it as much as you used to. What I have to assume you were aware of that. Was this kind of the first time it really hit you that like, all right, this isn't, I love sports, but I don't want this to be my job. I want to still be able on Sundays to enjoy the games with my friends and drink beer and eat chicken wings and do everything else the NFL fans want to do.
So I was aware that I'm just gonna be surrounded by
Yeah.
football, but the positions that I ended up falling into were the positions I didn't want because I was on the production side where it's like
Mhm.
not
Yeah.
you don't get to be creative at all. Like what
Yeah.
they tell you is what you got to do, and that's it. Like people who worked on the creative side, they had more free time. They were more creative. They weren't really as people weren't as like strict on them about what they had to do
Mhm.
because they just had to play around with what's happening all around them. So that's when I knew, like, hey, I don't want to be on the production back end side of stuff anymore. I want to figure out how to get to the other, because at the network you have a production building, and on the other side is like the creative side. Basically, I was like, how do I end up on that side? That
Mhm.
basically what I ended up getting to towards the ending of my journey there, because it wasn't that long. It was about just basically season length is what I was there for. I was like, okay, I need to figure out how to get to that side. But thanks to the jobs I had, it opened obviously more doors for people to like interview me. And as we spoke about after the network, I had the chance to interview with the Kansas City Chiefs for one of their social media position. Didn't get the job, but I was
Mhm.
thankful for that opportunity, and that kind of landed me where I'm at now,
Mhm.
and it's kind of all worked out. But
Yeah.
that's where I realized, like at the networks, where I realized I need to end up on that side to be able to enjoy football.
Mhm. And that makes sense, and that definitely makes sense. I mean, again, you're not quite you kind of kept falling into positions, pretty cool positions to certain people, but as you said, it wasn't really what you wanted to do. You wanted to be on the other side essentially. And unfortunately that wasn't the thing. Of course, you were in one of those, I guess, pay your dues, right? In one
Mhm.
of those pay your dues positions where that's where everyone has to start. You got to start at the bottom to be able to build your way up. But it sounds like even if you built your way up, it still wasn't anything that you really wanted to do. So again, thankfully, you were able to figure out what you did want to do and how you did want to kind of progress your career. And as you said, and into what you're doing now. So how did this opportunity come up? So again, let's see. I told you about 45 minutes. I'm going to butcher the name, but let's see if I can do it. Combate Americas.
Correct. So
Nice. All right. So tell us about what it is, how you got this job, and what you do there.
Combate Americas is basically another form of MMA fighting. So another UFC, another Bellator. We don't relate to them. It's just our own version, and we focus on Latin American fighters, Spanish fighters. It's a bilingual gig, Spanish first, English second. And I fell into this because I also have a Spanish degree, double majored with Spanish as well, just to use that as to my advantage. And when I got to the NFL, I realized there aren't a lot of Spanish openings for like the Rams had finally opened like a Spanish version to their team, like Spanish social media. I was like, but there aren't a lot of teams branching out to Spanish, which is a big part of the U.S. now. Like we make up a good amount of the U.S. population. I was like, I need to figure out how to get there and open that up. And that's when somehow, some way, I found that Kansas City bilingual position. Like, how the hell is Kansas City, out of all teams, having a bilingual job? But then I put two and two together. They were going to Mexico that following season to play. Yep. I was like, oh, they're smart. They want to get ahead because of that. I was like, okay, that makes sense. But then I saw that because I need to be able to find a bilingual job to gain the experience after I didn't get that job to be able to get in there. And then I was just, this is the first job I've heard back through LinkedIn, by the way. I applied 100 applications through LinkedIn, one and only job till this day that got back to me. I just typed in bilingual in LinkedIn and was searching, and then I saw this Combate Americas bilingual social position. I was like, never even heard of this. What is this? Look up to. I sent my application, and after I applied, I looked into it and I realized, oh, it's just a form of fight. I was like, at this point, I was like, I just saw bilingual social media. I'm in. What I want to do, let's send the app and figure the rest out as we go. So I sent it, and then I started looking into it. Oh, they're fighting. I can deal with that. It gives me a break from football. And then I got the interview. The interview ended up being 10 minutes from my house, a couple blocks from my high school. I was like, holy smokes, this would be perfect if this works out because I don't got to be driving hours no more in LA traffic to get anywhere. It's just up and down my block. And since it's still like a growing company, they told me if you get the job, you're going to be doing a little bit of everything because they're still trying to figure it out. And 2 weeks later, I got the call saying, hey, we'd like to offer you the position. I was like, well, this is going good. This is what I wanted. And the funny thing is I got the call on my way to Canada as I was going on a little snowboarding trip for the weekend. So I was like, they made it even extra special for that weekend to just I went and met up with college friends in Canada. We had a great weekend. And I was like, well, I don't got to worry because I finally solidified my job. So we're good. We're good to go.
That's awesome, man. And congratulations. And I think, I mean, when you told me about it, I did a little research. I mean, I'm not the biggest MMA fan. I don't really even like UFC that much, but to each his own. I mean, it's definitely interesting. So I guess like what timeline here? When was this? What you got the job about a year and a half ago, right?
I got the job. So my NFL job, I knew I was gonna finish second week of February. They gave us that no matter what happens, you're done second week of February. After Super Bowl, everyone who was on the contract's done. So I applied in January and I got the job maybe the weekend before I was gonna finish up at the NFL. Oh, that's when they offered me because I wanted to make sure I didn't want to be like before where I'm like in limbo trying to search for jobs. The worst thing in the world. So I wanted to make sure my job was solidified because at the NFL Network, just like the Rams and Chargers, they're like, we may have positions open, but there's pretty much a line of people who've been, year to year with us who might get it before you do. It just depends. I was like, I don't want to have to rely on maybe. I want to make sure I have a job. And then when I got the job, I told them like, hey, thank you for the opportunity, but I already accepted an offer. Won't be back next year. And they understood, obviously, because I told them like I want to use my Spanish in a professional manner to help me with my resume. It opens up more doors for me. So when that happened, I was just like you. I was like, I knew about MMA, had seen some stuff, but I was not the biggest fan. For me, I was like, it's a way for me to break off from football to become a fan again and then learn this sport. Because I'm like, if it's a new sport, a new position, I'm going to be learning a lot more out of this than if I were to hop into another football job where I would just feel more comfortable and I don't think I have to learn more in a sense. And then, my boss, the boss who hired me, she was great. She moved on eventually, but because of her, I like grew so much because I was just thrown into the fire. 2 weeks after, maybe when I got back from Canada, 2 weeks, I was already on a plane to Mexico for my first event. I was like, holy shit, this is happening. This is going on.
Traveling again, maybe not quite the same way as with the Rams, but traveling again then. And I guess like what. So you've been doing this job for a little while, and we'll kind of take these last 3 months with the pandemic and everything out. Obviously, it's been kind of weird. The time that you've been there, I mean, what are some of the things that you've found out about the sport that maybe you really started to like a little bit more, like connecting with the fighters and the players? Like, what have you been doing to really amplify this brand, Combate Americas. I'll get it. I'll get it, man.
You
At
caught
least I
yourself.
didn't.
It's good. You caught
I caught
yourself.
it. I caught it.
You
I
got
caught
it.
it. What
Fine.
have you been doing to help? I mean, as a social media coordinator, as you said, you kind of have wearing a lot of different hats, but what are you doing to help amplify the brand to get this in front of people to show them that, hey, you're not watching the UFC, you can be watching this. You're not watching Bellator, you can be watching this, and really connecting. I mean, other than through Spanish, with the Latin American fans that would come to see these fighters specifically.
So our creator, basically his biggest thing was like, so we're gonna push Mexico hard, and we're gonna push cities in the U.S. where UFC and Bellator don't go, and there's a bigger Spanish population, so we can bring new fans. So that's kind of the way we attack things. Like, we don't want to go to LA. We don't want to go to San Fran because also LA. There's just so much going on where any given Friday, if you're not the talk of the town, you're not going to get nobody to show up to you. So in California, we mostly go to Fresno is probably the best place in California, just because, again, Fresno's in the middle of kind of nowhere in California in a sense. So, not a lot of people want to go up there. We go up to Stockton a lot because there's a bigger Spanish population. And we go to Tijuana and Mexicali, which are two border cities. And in Mexico, we visit Mexico City, Guadalajara, and Monterrey. Those are 3 big hubs in Mexico. So and that's pretty much where we dial in. And then I think the biggest thing that I liked about the job so far is that, like I told you, I have to wear a bunch of hats. So I'm not just strictly social media. Everyone does everything. So I've learned how to edit both video and photography. I would not say I'm definitely not an expert. I'm not no creative mastermind, but I can do things that I knew I couldn't do before and at a faster pace. And just the relationships you build, because it's only when I first started, it was 4 of us who were a part of the digital team, and we were all trying to run around and with our heads chopped off, trying to figure out how we're going to figure all this out and do it. So it's been off the bat, it was a great learning experience because I came in there thinking one thing, but doing a completely different thing right away. So it was kind of chaotic at first, and I've never been to an MMA fight. And then my first MMA event, I saw a dude take a head to the knee and pass out. I was like, oh, so this is MMA. Okay, cool. I could get behind this. I wouldn't be fighting this, slow more action. I wouldn't do it, but watching this guy. And then that's when I kind of getting more into the sport. I'm like, this is actually not the worst. Like, you're seeing people just beat the shit out of their asses for money.
Hey, I mean, that's
to each their own. To each their own.
It's very primal. It's very human, right? Like, let's get a foot race and a fight. I feel like those are the 2 things that are very primal. It's just us human beings. That's all we got. We got our fists, we got our feet, and that's all we can do. So it's really interesting. And I'm glad you started to like it more and more over time too. I think that's pretty important. And in terms of social media, how are you, like, what is different that you're doing here than you would have? And again, you obviously didn't work at the UFC or Bellator, but like, I'm sure you pay attention to the things that they're doing and how they're doing it. How are you guys trying to make sure that you are different and you're really pushing, again, the Spanish aspect? Again, you're really pushing hey, watch us because, your Latin fighters, your family members, your countrymen, they're fighting here. When I'll be honest, I don't know, but I'm assuming there are other Mexicans. I'm sure there's other Dominicans and Puerto Ricans that are in the UFC and Bellator. Again, I don't know. I'm just assuming. Like, how are you kind of distinctly making sure that those people understand, no, you should be coming over here to watch because we're tailoring it to you? Or in a kind of a long-winded question that I don't think I really ended, but I think you understand.
So first off, I think so in the Hispanic community, the one biggest thing is family. So they always try to make everything based off of family. Like, hey, we're here for you. You're here for us, no matter what. And the second thing is the UFC, Bellator, they already have established fighters, grapplers, whatever you name it. They have established fighters. We look for the young and up and coming guys who are more for like show, like they're there for the knockout. They want to stay on their feet and just go at it. They don't want to go on the ground. Because I don't know if you ever seen a UFC fight when they get to the ground, they're like hugging each other. We're like, no one wants to see that. Like, that just, after a while, it just gets boring, where another man's just laying another man breathing heavily on him. No one wants to see that. So our fight team and our head honcho, basically, they look for people who specialize in, like, basically striking, who have boxing backgrounds, to make sure when they're in the cage, they're just gonna go toe to toe and not try to like shy away from any kind of contact. So I know at one point last year we had multiple events where it was like first round knockouts, just like it was a back to back, and we're like, oh shit, how are we gonna fill all this TV time? Because like we didn't expect all this to happen. So they always try to do that, and then we always try to get people who have a boxing background, since boxing is a big thing in Mexico. You know, they have some of the biggest boxers, so they try to get into that realm too. And then we've got into the lucha realm. We've getting some lucha fighters as well. It's like basically lucha's like WWE. Okay. WWE for in like Mexico is just another. It's just how they refer to it. It's called lucha libre. So we get some lucha libre stars as well to not just bring more eye candy, I guess, to our sport. But in a sense, basically, we try to make it tailored to like the family aspect with younger and upcoming fighters in a sense. So we're not, you know, boring old fighters who've been there for like 20 years.
Yeah. And so with that, you know, again, you're wearing a lot of different hats. Your title is social media coordinator, but it sounds like you're even talking about the TV aspect. It sounds like you're still doing some filming and some you know, photography and some editing on top of it. How many, like, how much fun is it to be able to, as you said, utilize your Spanish? You want to be in that bilingual aspect, so that way you can kind of put that on a resume and it's there and it's much more attractive, makes you much more attractive to other companies. But how much fun is it now to be able to say you've done all of these things and you're able to say that, yes, maybe I'm not a master at any of one of these things. Obviously, social media, you're probably very damn good at it. But all these other things you can say, like, I have experience in it and I've worked at it and it's for a startup fighting company. Like, that's pretty damn cool.
That was one of the biggest draws to me, because if I take it back to school, the biggest thing at Oregon was to make sure you don't focus and hone in on one thing, because in today's world, if you're just a specialist in one thing, they can find like 5 people who can do that, but also do like 10 other things at the same time. So the biggest thing to them was like, make sure you guys can do a little bit of everything. Maybe be good at one thing, but make sure that you can do a little bit of everything else so you can branch out and do that. So when I saw this about this type, I was like, hey, this is perfect, because yes, I'm going to be working with social media, but I'm also going to be working with YouTube. I'm going to be working with the fighters. I'm going to be writing stuff. I'm going to be working with TV and making sure like the promos work and blah, 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 and translating in Spanish. So like, this is like perfect, because for me, I'm still young and I'm still growing in this industry. I'm like, I need to soak up as much of this as I can, because the more stuff I know and the more stuff I get better at, it's just going to benefit me more down the road in terms of other jobs. Because yes, I can do social media, but I can edit, I can point and shoot, and just little things like that. And then I can do it in both languages as well. So it's like, it's the best thing. But I think also the best thing also about this job is like, I don't ever feel like I'm working, because it just feels like it's like I'm like in the backyard with my uncles growing up, all talking Spanish to each other, because obviously there's a lot of Spanish slang and we all just talk to each other like that. So it just makes it more welcoming and more comfortable in a sense. And then the fighters hop in and they because obviously if you go to other places, if they don't have people with this background, you can't really connect with like the fighters or other people like that, because you know you're coming from one side of the world and they're on the other side. But when fighters see that you know Spanish, like there's been some fighters that we have that only know Spanish, and we send people who only speak English, and it's just a clash. It's like, of course, you're trying to figure out one saying, and so when they have people, you know, who can communicate with them, and they just feel more at home and more comfortable and willing to open up for like the interviews. Our interviews, we always have someone who speaks Spanish asking the questions to make sure the fighter realizes, hey, I can talk to him, because at the end of the day, you know, him and I understand each other. It's just easier. So I think that's the biggest draw about the job, is like just I've never really felt like it's a job in a sense, because I just feel like it's just one big family all trying to help this company grow in a sense.
That is awesome, man. And yeah, that's one thing. I mean, I'm a very big baseball fan, and you know, you see a lot with, and it's you know, not even getting asked the questions in Spanish, it's answering them in Spanish, right? Like it's that's your natural language, or at least many of these guys, I'm assuming that's their first language. You're obviously going to feel comfortable speaking that over a language that, yeah, you can speak it, you can talk, you know, but it's more natural for you, right? Like Ichiro, he speaks English, you know, obviously, but he will never go to a press conference and speak English, because he knows something can be missaid and then the media is going to run wild with it. A lot of Spanish guys, I mean, Cespedes, one of, you know, a Mets player, he can speak English. I've heard him speak English before, but if he does the press conference, he doesn't want to, because he's more comfortable. He knows he's going to say the right thing in Spanish. You can easily speak English all the time. Like, what? That wasn't even a correct sentence, what I just said. So it's kind of crazy how some of that stuff works. And
I was gonna say, I remember just on that. I remember one year I saw ESPN do a interview with Yasiel Puig when he was here with the Dodgers, and they were asking him questions in English. I'm like, so you're telling me not one person on ESPN staff in LA speaks Spanish to make that interview a little more easier for both of them? Like, it was just so off. I'm like, that's where I was like, I need to make sure I like hone in on this bilingual stuff, because that just opens more doors. Absolutely. So when I see little things like that, like You're telling me ESPN in LA
Mhm.
doesn't have anyone who could have gone in there to speak Spanish to Yasuo Peak, that probably would have been a better interview, not way better, wow, a better interview in
Yeah,
a sense, like,
you and me both, man. We're crushing it in these last couple
oh
minutes.
god.
One last thing that I think is kind of interesting. So your career has kind of come full circle a little bit. Now, you know, on the social media side, has the word media in it. You're in sports media essentially, right? So you're not quite doing exactly what you thought you would as you came out of school, but you're much closer to it now than you were as a production assistant at the NFL. How does that like revitalize your juices to get back in front of the camera, to get back in front? I'm assuming you're probably doing some of that stuff already, considering you have to wear all these hats. So how much of that is worked into this social media coordinator role of kind of some of the stuff that you thought about you were going to do before?
So it's funny because going full circle, like you said, the radio station that ghosted me, we actually connected again, and some things are kind of in the works with them right now. There's
Uh-huh.
nothing definitive, but I told them like, hey, don't worry. I told them like straight up, if you guys hired me, I think I would have blown it because my Spanish not where it should have been. And in the
Uh-huh.
past year and a half that I've been with this job, my Spanish has grown so much that now, like before, I had to like always break off and say English stuff because I just wouldn't
Mhm.
remember some Spanish words. Now I can like have more
Yeah, yeah,
comfortable
yeah.
Spanish conversations. So it's been wearing all these hats the past year and a half has really kind of, like I said, revitalized. Like, hey, I don't think I want to end up back in the camera because just that side of the sports world is just so competitive.
Mhm.
And then I have so many friends who've had to go to like little markets to like make a name for themselves to
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
eventually get to the bigger places. And like, I don't think I can go back and move to like the middle of Illinois to be on camera to
Yeah.
possibly have a shot. So I'm now more comfortable being like behind the scenes, kind of
Mhm.
showing everyone with social media, like, hey, this is what can happen, and this is what goes on behind the doors that most people don't see, which is I think the best thing about social media is like you're behind the scenes and you get to see what's going on that not a lot of people see.
Mhm.
And that's what I always try to like push, like, hey, we gotta show some of these people like what goes on behind like the cage being built, the fighters getting ready, just the mentality of like not just what they see on TV, but like if we
Mhm.
could show them more of what goes on, more of like the human aspect of it, like that's great because like that would make them connect more because they only see what we are giving them, what we're showing them. And if we can kind of show them more behind the scenes is great. So I think with this job is kind of showing me like this is kind of where I want to stay at. I don't have any more aspirations of being that whole TV thing was out the door a while ago.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I made peace with that a long time ago. But the radio thing, I still have, the itch to I'm working in MMA, but I still love football.
Mhm.
Football has always been the biggest thing to me. Big NCAA and big NFL guy. Like I stay up to that. I stay up to date like that, like no other. Most of my Twitter followers are all based people who are right talk about football. So when I talked to them about this sports thing, I was like, hey, is there any possibility they might be getting the Raiders too? So I might be going and helping them with their football coverage. So
Mhm.
hopefully, this kind of goes down the right way. But in a sense, I was mad at them that they ghosted me, but I'm kind of thankful
Mhm.
also that they ghosted me because I probably would have blown that job so bad like I did with the radio station in Oregon because I definitely was not comfortable with my Spanish. And now that I'm older, you're like, look back and you're like, oh, things really do happen for a reason in a
Mhm.
sense.
Yep, I love it. All these stories come full circle. It seems like you have a couple different circles that fulfilled, and hey, maybe you and Uncle Brent Musburger. That's going to be a fun duo. But Eric, this has been absolutely fantastic. Erick Villar, social media coordinator at Combate Americas. Really Americas, right?
Correct. Combate Americas. Yep, you nailed it.
Combate Americas. I got good. I got kind of good at it by the end. But no, sincerely, man, really appreciate your time today.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. Take care. Stay safe out there, everyone.